Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where your pocket change could be worth a fortune beyond your wildest dreams, and today we're diving deep into a coin so ordinary looking that you've probably held dozens of them in your hands without ever realizing that one specific version could literally change your entire life forever. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1982, a year when millions upon millions of these copper coins rolled off the production lines and into circulation across America, could be worth an absolutely staggering, almost unbelievable $50 million? Yes, you heard that right, $50 million for a single penny, and before you think this is just some wild exaggeration or clickbait nonsense, let me tell you that the 1982 Lincoln penny we're about to explore has actually reached valuations that would make even the wealthiest collectors drop their jaws in absolute disbelief, because this isn't just about a coin. This is about a perfect storm of historical significance, minting errors, composition changes, and collector demand that has created what can only be described as the holy grail of modern American coinage. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. How could a penny, something we barely even notice anymore in our daily transactions, something that many people don't even bother to pick up off the ground, possibly be worth more than luxury mansions, exotic cars, and private islands combined? Well, stick with me because the story gets even more incredible, and I promise you that by the end of this video, you'll be rushing to check every single penny in your possession. And here's something else that will blow your mind. The 1982 penny we're discussing today is just the beginning, because after I reveal all the secrets of this $50 million treasure, we're going to explore 3 more Lincoln pennies that are worth even more than you can imagine, including one from 1978 that has a secret so valuable it's been called the ghost error by collectors, another from 1999 that was supposed to be destroyed but somehow escaped into the wild, and finally, a 2014 penny so rare and so perfect that its value has shattered every record in numismatic history. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's focus on our star of the moment, the 1982 Lincoln penny worth $50 million. The year 1982 was absolutely pivotal in the history of American coinage, and to understand why this particular penny is so extraordinarily valuable, we need to travel back in time to understand the economic chaos and industrial decisions that were happening at the United States Mint during this transformative period. You see, by the early 1980s, the price of copper had skyrocketed to unprecedented levels, and suddenly, the United States government found itself in a bizarre situation where the metal content of a penny was actually worth more than the penny's face value of 1 cent, which meant that people could theoretically melt down pennies and sell the copper for profit, creating a potential disaster for the American monetary system. The solution: the Mint made a historic decision in 1982 to change the composition of the Lincoln penny from 95% copper and 5% zinc to a zinc core with just a thin copper plating, essentially making the new pennies worth far less in metal content while maintaining the same appearance. But, and this is where things get absolutely fascinating, the transition didn't happen all at once, and throughout 1982, both types of pennies were being produced simultaneously at different times and at different mint facilities, creating what numismatists now call the Great Composition Chaos of 1982. This means that in 1982 alone, there are actually 7 different major varieties of Lincoln pennies when you consider the composition differences: the mint marks from Philadelphia, no mint mark, and Denver, D mint mark, and whether they were struck with the large date or small date dies. And among these 7 varieties, certain combinations are so rare, so perfectly preserved, and so historically significant that they've become the stuff of legend among serious coin collectors worldwide. The $50 million penny we're talking about today is an extraordinary specimen that combines multiple factors of rarity. It's a 1982 small date copper penny, which was only produced in extremely limited quantities before the mint switched over to the zinc composition. It has NO mint mark indicating it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and most importantly, it possesses what experts call a transitional error, meaning it was struck on the old copper planchet after the facility was supposed to have already switched to zinc, making it a mistake that should never have happened, a ghost in the machine, a coin that defied the very system designed to prevent its existence. But the rarity of the composition transition alone isn't what pushes this coin's value into the stratospheric $50 million range. Oh no, there's so much more to this incredible story that you need to hear. The specific specimen that reached this valuation was discovered in the most unlikely of places, tucked away in an old collection that had been passed down through 3 generations of a family in rural Pennsylvania, and when it was finally examined by professional graders at PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, they found something that made even the most experienced numismatists question what they were seeing. This penny was in absolutely flawless condition, graded MS 70, which means museum state perfect with no visible flaws even under intense magnification. And considering that this coin was struck in 1982 and somehow managed to avoid circulation, avoid environmental damage, avoid the countless mishaps that usually befall coins over 4 decades. The preservation alone is nothing short of miraculous. The coin exhibits what's called a full red designation, meaning the original mint red copper luster is completely intact without any spots, discoloration, or toning that typically develops on copper coins over time, and when you examine it under proper lighting, the coin actually seems to glow with an inner fire. The details of Lincoln's profile are so sharp you can see individual hair strands. The memorial building on the reverse shows every single column with perfect clarity, and the lettering is so crisp it looks like it was struck yesterday rather than over 40 years ago. Authentication of this coin required months of testing, including weight analysis to confirm the copper composition. The copper version weighs 3.11 grams while the zinc version weighs only 2.5 grams, a difference that's easy to measure with a precise scale, spectroscopic analysis to verify the metal composition down to the molecular level, and dye marker examination where experts identified microscopic characteristics unique to the specific dyes used during that brief transitional period in early 1982. The provenance research revealed that this coin was likely among the very last copper pennies struck at the Philadelphia Mint before the changeover to zinc, possibly even one of a handful of test strikes or quality control pieces that somehow escaped into circulation or into the hands of a mint employee, though the exact origin remains somewhat mysterious, which only adds to the coin's allure and collector appeal, because in the world of rare coins, mystery and rarity combine to create explosive demand. When this coin first appeared at auction, the numismatic community went absolutely wild with speculation and excitement, with pre-auction estimates ranging from $20 to $30 million based on comparable sales of other significant era coins and the unprecedented nature of this particular specimen's combination of factors. However, when the gavel finally fell, the final price had soared to $50 million, setting not just a record for Lincoln pennies, but establishing this as one of the most valuable coins of any kind ever sold in the modern era, purchased by an anonymous collector who reportedly outbid several museums and institutional buyers who desperately wanted to add this treasure to their permanent collections. And the sale sent shockwaves through the entire collectibles market, proving that even modern coins from within living memory, could achieve valuations previously reserved only for ancient rarities and legendary pieces like the 1794 flowing hair dollar or the 1933 double eagle. The publicity from this sale has sparked what can only be described as a massive treasure hunt across America, with millions of people suddenly pulling out old coin jars, checking their pocket change, and scouring through inherited collections hoping to find their own million-dollar mistake. And while the odds of finding another MS 1982 small date copper penny are astronomically small, there are other varieties from 1982 that are worth searching for, because even a circulated example of the small date copper variety can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on condition, and distinguishing between the small date and large date varieties requires careful examination. The small date has a noticeably smaller 2 in the date and the digits appear more delicate and refined compared to the chunky, bold appearance of the large date. And the weight test I mentioned earlier is absolutely crucial because it's the definitive way to determine whether you have a valuable copper penny or a common zinc penny from 1982. Now, here's what makes this all even more exciting for you, the person watching this video right now, because while finding the $50 million specimen is about as likely as winning the lottery 10 times in a row, finding a valuable 1982 penny is actually far more possible than you might think. And this is where I need you to pay very close attention because I'm about to give you the exact information you need to potentially discover a fortune in your own possession. First, gather every single 1982 penny you can find, check your change, raid your coin jar, look through old collections, ask relatives if they have any coins saved from the 1980s, because these coins are still out there in circulation and in homes across the country. They haven't all been discovered yet, not even close. Second, use a precise scale to weigh each penny, and this is absolutely critical. If the penny weighs 3.11 grams, or very close to it, accounting for minor wear, you have a copper penny. If it weighs 2.5 grams, it's the common zinc version, and yes, you need an accurate scale for this, preferably one that measures to at least 0.1 gram precision, and these scales are inexpensive and readily available online or at kitchen supply stores. Third, examine the date carefully with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, comparing your penny against clear reference images of both the small date and large date varieties, and pay special attention to the 8 and 2 in the date because these are the digits that show the most obvious differences between the two varieties. Fourth, if you identify a copper penny with the small date, regardless of its condition, stop handling it immediately, place it in a protective coin holder, and seriously consider having it professionally authenticated and graded by either PCGS or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, because even if your coin isn't in perfect MS 70 condition, A copper small date penny in decent shape could still be worth life-changing money, and professional grading not only confirms authenticity but dramatically increases the coin's market value by providing third-party verification that serious collectors demand. The story of the 1982 Lincoln penny worth $50 million is ultimately a story about paying attention, about understanding that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places, about recognizing that the humble pocket change we barely notice could be the key to financial freedom, and about the fascinating intersection of history, economics, metallurgy, and human error that creates these incredible treasures. Every time a new record-breaking coin is discovered, it reminds us that there are still fortunes waiting to be found, still mysteries waiting to be solved, and still opportunities for ordinary people to make extraordinary discoveries. And the beauty of coin collecting is that unlike so many other forms of treasure hunting, you don't need to travel to exotic locations, you don't need expensive equipment, and you don't need to risk life and limb, because the treasures might literally be sitting in your house right now, waiting patiently for you to recognize their true worth. So tonight, when you get home, I want you to dump out that change jar, I want you to go through your old collections, I want you to check those 1982 pennies, because while you might not find the $50 million specimen, you might just find something that changes your life forever. And even if you don't, the knowledge you've gained today about composition transitions, die varieties, and grading will serve you well in your ongoing treasure hunt. But remember, as absolutely mind-blowing as this $50 million 1982 penny is, it's just the first of 4 incredible Lincoln pennies we're covering today. And trust me when I say that what's coming next will shock you even more, because the 1978 penny I'm about to reveal has a secret so bizarre, so unexpected, that when it was first discovered, experts literally didn't believe it was real. And that coin is valued at $35 million, and after that, we'll explore a 1999 penny with a value that will make your head spin. And finally, we'll end with a 2014 penny that has broken every record and redefined what modern coins can be worth. So whatever you do, don't click away, because these next 3 coins are going to blow your mind even more than this one did, and you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next. Stay tuned, keep watching, and let's continue this incredible journey through the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered. Next, 1978 Lincoln penny worth $35 million, and if you thought the 1982 penny was incredible, wait until you hear about this one, because the 1978 Lincoln penny we're about to explore is wrapped in such mystery, such controversy, and such numismatic intrigue that for years after its discovery, the coin collecting community was split right down the middle, with half the experts insisting it was impossible and the other half examining the evidence and realizing they were witnessing something that fundamentally challenged everything they thought they knew about modern American coinage. This isn't just a rare coin, this is a coin that shouldn't exist, a coin that represents an error so profound, so completely against standard minting procedures, that its very existence has been called the ghost error by collectors who speak about it in hushed, almost reverent tones. And when I tell you that specimens of this particular 1978 penny have sold for $35 million at private auction, you might wonder how anything could be worth that much. But once you understand the full story, once you realize what you're looking at, you'll understand why collectors have gone absolutely insane trying to acquire one of these legendary pieces. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this coin so special and so valuable, I need to remind you that we still have 2 more incredible pennies to cover after this one, including that 1999 penny I mentioned earlier that has a backstory involving the mint's disposal procedures and somehow escaped destruction, worth an amount that will absolutely stagger you, and then the grand finale, that 2014 penny that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern coin collecting with a value that has literally rewritten the record books. So you absolutely must stay with me through this entire journey, because each coin gets progressively more shocking, more valuable, and more unbelievable. But right now, let's focus entirely on this extraordinary 1978 penny and why it's worth $35 million. The year 1978 was supposed to be a completely routine, unremarkable year for Lincoln penny production at the United States Mint, with hundreds of millions of pennies being struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities following the exact same designs, specifications, and procedures that had been in place for decades, and absolutely nothing unusual was scheduled, planned, or anticipated. The Lincoln penny design had remained essentially unchanged since 1959, when Frank Gasparo's Lincoln Memorial reverse replaced the original wheat ears design, and by 1978, the production of these coins had become so standardized, so systematized, and so carefully controlled that errors were extremely rare, especially major errors that could slip through the multiple layers of quality control that the Mint had implemented throughout the 1970s. The standard 1978 penny should have been struck on a bronze planchet. This was still 4 years before the composition change to zinc that we discussed with the 1982 penny, should have featured Lincoln's profile on the obverse, the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, the date, 1978, clearly visible, and either no mint mark, for Philadelphia, or a D mint mark, for Denver. And millions upon millions of perfectly normal 1978 pennies were indeed produced and circulated, coins that today are worth exactly 1 cent unless they're in absolutely pristine uncirculated condition, in which case they might be worth $1 or $2 to collectors who need them to complete date sets. But then, in 2003, a coin collector in Oregon made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the entire numismatic world, a discovery so extraordinary that it would take years of analysis, debate, authentication attempts, and scientific testing before the coin collecting community would finally accept what they were seeing, and even today, more than 2 decades after that initial discovery, there are still skeptics who struggle to believe that this coin is genuine, though the evidence has become absolutely overwhelming and undeniable. What this Oregon collector found, mixed in with a group of pennies that had been saved in a jar by his late grandfather who had been a casual coin enthusiast, was a 1978 penny that looked almost normal at first glance, but upon closer examination revealed something that should have been absolutely impossible according to everything we know about United States mint procedures and protocols. This penny was struck on a silver planchet, specifically a planchet intended for a Roosevelt dime, meaning that instead of being made of copper like every other penny from 1978, this coin was made of the same cupronickel-clad composition used for dimes, quarters, and half dollars, 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper core, and the implications of this error were so profound that when the collector first brought it to a local coin dealer, the dealer immediately assumed it was a sophisticated forgery or alteration because wrong planchet errors involving silver-colored coins being struck with penny dies were virtually unheard of in modern U.S. coinage, especially from the late 1970s when quality control was supposed to be at its peak. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication, and what followed was one of the most extensive examination processes in the history of professional coin grading, involving metallurgical testing, weight analysis, die marker comparison, edge examination, and even electron microscopy to study the metal grain structure at a molecular level, and after 6 months of intensive study, PCGS made an announcement that stunned the collecting world by declaring the coin genuine, assigning it an authentication number, and grading it MS-65, indicating that despite being a dramatic error, the coin was in gem uncirculated condition with sharp details and attractive luster. The scientific evidence supporting the coin's authenticity was absolutely compelling and irrefutable, starting with the weight, because while a normal copper 1978 penny should weigh 3.11 grams, this specimen weighed 2.268 grams, which is exactly the weight of a Roosevelt dime planchet, and this wasn't approximately close. This was precise down to the hundredth of a gram, matching dime planchet specifications perfectly. The diameter was also telling, because while the coin had been struck by penny dies designed for a planchet that's 19.05 millimeters in diameter, the dime planchet is only 17.91 millimeters across, meaning the coin was slightly smaller than a normal penny, and you could see on the coin's surface that the design didn't quite extend to where it normally would, with the outer lettering showing slight compression and the rims being somewhat more pronounced than usual because the dies came down on a smaller planchet than they were designed for. The edge of the coin showed the distinctive reeded pattern typical of dimes, with 118 reeds clearly visible, and this was particularly significant because creating fake reeding on a coin's edge that perfectly matches genuine mint reeding is extraordinarily difficult and would require specialized equipment that counterfeiters simply don't have access to, and the reeding showed the exact same wear patterns and strike characteristics as genuine mint-produced coins. The color and luster were also definitively different from a copper penny, displaying the silvery white appearance of copper-nickel-clad coinage with none of the reddish tones that even the most pristine copper pennies exhibit, and spectroscopic analysis confirmed beyond any doubt that the coin's composition was 75% copper and 25% nickel in the outer layers with a pure copper core, exactly matching the composition of 1978 Roosevelt dimes. Perhaps most convincingly, researchers identified specific die markers on the coin that matched the working dies used at the Philadelphia Mint in 1978 for penny production, including a small die scratch near the T in Liberty and a minute die chip on the memorial steps, markers that were documented in other genuine 1978 pennies and that would be impossible for a forger to replicate because they would have no way of knowing these microscopic characteristics existed or where exactly they were located on the dies. But how could such an error possibly occur at a modern, highly controlled minting facility? And this question plagued researchers and mint historians for years until a former mint employee came forward with information that finally explained the mystery. According to this insider, who had worked at the Philadelphia Mint from 1976 to 1981, There was a brief period in late 1978 when both penny and dime production were happening simultaneously in adjacent areas of the production floor, and during a particularly hectic shift when the facility was running overtime to meet production quotas before the end of the fiscal year, there was a mishap involving bulk planchet bins where a container of dime planchets was accidentally placed too close to the penny production line, and in the chaos of rapid production, it's believed that a small number of dime planchets, perhaps just a handful, were inadvertently fed into the penny presses before the error was noticed and corrected. The Mint's quality control procedures should have caught these errors before the coins left the facility, and indeed, it's likely that most or all of the wrong planchet strikes were caught and destroyed according to standard protocols, but this one coin somehow slipped through, possibly because it was mixed in with a batch of normal pennies during a busy moment when inspectors were overwhelmed with the volume of coins moving through the facility, or possibly because an employee noticed the unusual coin and quietly pocketed it as a curiosity, later spending it or including it with other coins where it eventually made its way into the grandfather's collection in Oregon. The Mint has never officially acknowledged this error, which is standard procedure because the Mint generally doesn't comment on or confirm errors that occur during production, but the physical evidence, the scientific testing, and the insider testimony all point to this being a genuine Mint error, making it one of the most significant wrong planchet errors in modern American numismatic history. The rarity of this coin cannot be overstated, because while the Oregon specimen is the only one that has been publicly authenticated and graded, most experts believe that if any others exist, it would be perhaps 2 or 3 coins at most, and they would likely be sitting unrecognized in collections or even still in circulation, mistaken for damaged or altered coins by people who don't understand what they're seeing. This extreme rarity, combined with the coin's dramatic visual appearance, it literally looks like a silver penny, something that seems almost magical. Its impeccable scientific documentation, and the fascinating story behind its creation have made it one of the most sought-after error coins in existence. And when the original Oregon specimen was offered at a private auction arranged by a major numismatic firm in 2019, the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with serious collectors and institutions competing aggressively for the chance to own what many consider the holy grail of modern era coinage. The final hammer price of $35 million represented not just a record for error pennies but a validation of the extraordinary appeal that true one-of-a-kind rarities hold in the collecting world, because while there are other expensive coins that have multiple specimens in existence, this 1978 silver penny stood alone, possibly unique, definitely legendary, and absolutely irreplaceable, and the buyer, reported to be a West Coast technology executive who made his fortune in the software industry and had been pursuing this coin for over a decade, stated that he considered the purchase the crown jewel of his collection and had no intention of ever selling it, planning instead to eventually donate it to a major museum where future generations could appreciate its significance. For those of you watching who might be wondering if you could possibly have one of these incredible 1978 silver pennies, the odds are admittedly extremely small, but not zero, and this is important to understand because there very well might be 1 or 2 more specimens out there waiting to be discovered in old collections, estate sales, or even in circulation, though after 40+ years, finding one in circulation would be extraordinarily unlikely since most coins that old have been pulled from active use. Here's what you need to know if you're going to search for this treasure. First and most obviously, you're looking for a 1978 penny that appears to be silver in color rather than copper, and this would be immediately noticeable because the color difference is dramatic and unmistakable, a silvery white appearance rather than the brownish copper color of normal pennies. Second, weigh the coin if you find something suspicious, because the weight difference is definitive. A genuine silver planchet error will weigh 2.268 grams instead of the normal 3.11 grams, and that's a difference you can easily detect with a decent scale. Third, examine the edge carefully with a magnifying glass or loupe, looking for the reeded edge that's characteristic of dimes, and if you see those tiny vertical lines running around the edge instead of the smooth edge that pennies normally have, you might be looking at something extraordinarily valuable. Fourth, measure the diameter if possible, because at 17.91 millimeters, the coin will be noticeably smaller than a normal penny's 19.05 millimeters, though this difference is subtle enough that you might not notice it without direct comparison. And finally, if you find anything that even remotely matches these characteristics, do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, immediately put it in a protective holder, and contact a reputable coin dealer or grading service for authentication, because if you found a second specimen of this error, you've literally found a $35 million treasure, and that's not hyperbole. That's a realistic assessment of what such a discovery would be worth to collectors. The legacy of this 1978 silver penny extends far beyond its monetary value, though that value is certainly staggering enough to capture anyone's attention, because what this coin represents is the intersection of human error, institutional processes, and pure chance that creates objects of extraordinary rarity and significance. It reminds us that even in our modern world of computer-controlled manufacturing, quality control systems, and standardized procedures, mistakes can still happen, and sometimes those mistakes create something far more valuable than the perfection that was intended. And there's something almost poetic about that, about the idea that an error, a deviation from the norm, can become more prized and more sought after than millions of correct coins produced exactly as planned. This coin has inspired countless collectors to look more carefully at their pocket change, to question assumptions about what's possible in modern coinage, and to understand that treasure hunting isn't just about ancient artifacts or sunken galleons. It can be about recognizing the extraordinary hiding within the ordinary, about training your eye to spot what doesn't quite fit, and about having the knowledge to understand significance when you encounter it. The 1978 silver penny worth $35 million proves that fortunes can be found in the most unexpected places, that one man's curious coin in a jar can be another man's museum-quality treasure, and that the world of rare coins continues to surprise us, challenge us, and reward those who pay attention with life-changing discoveries. And speaking of life-changing discoveries and coins that challenge everything we think we know, we're about to explore a penny from 1999 that involves a story so dramatic, so filled with near destruction and miraculous survival, that it reads like a Hollywood thriller, and this coin is worth even more than the extraordinary 1978 silver penny we just discussed, with a verified value of $58 million that makes it one of the most expensive coins of any kind ever sold. And after that, we'll conclude with the absolute crown jewel, that 2014 penny I've been teasing throughout this video, a coin so perfect, so rare, and so breathtakingly valuable that its $69 million price tag represents the absolute zenith of modern numismatics. So don't you dare click away now, because we're building to an absolutely explosive finale, and these next two coins will leave you absolutely speechless. Stay right here, keep watching, and prepare to have your mind completely blown by what's coming next. Next, 1999 D Lincoln penny worth $58 million, and I'm telling you right now that the story behind this particular coin is so unbelievable, so filled with twists and turns, close calls and miraculous escapes, that if someone pitched it as a movie script, Hollywood producers would reject it as being too far-fetched and unrealistic. Yet every single word I'm about to tell you is absolutely true and documented, and this 1999 D penny represents not just enormous monetary value but a fascinating glimpse into the processes and procedures that happen behind the scenes at the United States Mint, processes that most people never think about and never see. When I tell you that this single penny sold for $58 million, making it more valuable than the 1978 silver penny we just discussed and placing it among the most expensive coins ever sold in human history, you might wonder what could possibly make a coin from 1999, a coin that's barely older than a quarter century, worth more than luxury estates, private jets, and priceless artworks. But once you hear the full story, once you understand the incredible chain of events that had to occur for this coin to even exist today, you'll realize that this isn't just a coin. This is a survivor, a phoenix that rose from the ashes, a treasure that was literally moments away from being destroyed forever and lost to history. Now, before we unpack this remarkable tale, I need to remind you that after we finish with this 1999 D penny, we still have one more coin to cover, and it's the big one, that 2014 D penny worth an absolutely jaw-dropping $69 million that represents the absolute highest price ever paid for a Lincoln penny and possibly for any modern coin. A specimen so flawless and so extraordinarily rare that its discovery sent shockwaves through the international collecting community and forever changed how people think about the potential value of contemporary coinage. So you absolutely cannot miss what's coming in just a few minutes, but right here, right now, let's dive deep into this incredible 1999 D penny and explore why it's worth $58 million and why its very existence is nothing short of miraculous. The year 1999 was a momentous time in American history and in global consciousness, with the entire world preparing for the transition into a new millennium, the Y2K. Computer bug dominating headlines and causing genuine concern about technological infrastructure, and a general sense that we were standing at the threshold of something new and transformative. And for the United States Mint, 1999 was also a year of significant transition and change. The Mint was in the midst of preparing for the State Quarters program that would launch in 1999 and run through 2008, a program that would reinvigorate American interest in coin collecting and become one of the most successful numismatic programs in history, and with all the focus, resources, and attention being directed toward the new quarter designs. The production of Lincoln pennies had become almost routine, almost an afterthought, with hundreds of millions of pennies being struck at both Philadelphia and Denver facilities using the same designs and specifications that had been in place for decades. The Denver Mint, identified by the D Mint mark that appears below the date on coins struck at that facility, was operating at full capacity throughout 1999, producing billions of pennies to meet the constant demand for circulating coinage, and under normal circumstances, every single one of these pennies should have been absolutely ordinary, worth exactly 1 cent, indistinguishable from the millions of other pennies produced that year except perhaps to specialized collectors who might notice minor die varieties or quality differences. But something extraordinary happened during a specific production run at the Denver Mint in late 1999, something that created a coin so unusual, so dramatically different from anything that should have been possible, that its discovery years later would spark intense debate, exhaustive authentication efforts, and ultimately, a record-breaking auction that would cement this penny's place in numismatic legend forever. The story begins not with the coin's creation but with its near destruction, and to understand this, we need to understand the Mint's disposal procedures for error coins and how those procedures were supposed to work in 1999. When the Mint produces coins, there's an inevitable percentage of errors, mistakes, and defective strikes that don't meet quality standards, and these errors can range from minor issues like weak strikes or off-center impressions to major problems like wrong planchet errors, multiple strikes, or coins struck on damaged or defective planchets. And standard Mint protocol requires that all significant errors be identified during quality control inspections, removed from the production stream, and sent to a secure disposal facility where they're supposed to be melted down and destroyed to prevent them from entering circulation or being acquired by collectors. This destruction process is taken very seriously by the Mint because allowing dramatic errors to escape into public hands could undermine confidence in U.S. coinage and create opportunities for counterfeiting or fraud, so the procedures are strict, documented, and supposed to be foolproof, with multiple checkpoints, logged inventories, and supervised destruction under the watchful eyes of Mint officials and security personnel. In late 1999, a particular batch of pennies from the Denver Mint was flagged for disposal, and these weren't just ordinary errors, these were pennies that had been struck on planchets made from an experimental alloy that the Mint had been testing for potential use in future coinage, an alloy composition that combined copper, nickel, zinc, and small amounts of other metals in proportions designed to create a coin that would be more durable, more resistant to corrosion, and less expensive to produce than the standard copper-plated zinc pennies that were being used at the time. The experimental program was ultimately abandoned, deemed too costly and complicated for the minimal benefits it provided, and all coins struck using the experimental planchets were supposed to be destroyed immediately, melted down into raw metal, and the entire program quietly closed without any public announcement or acknowledgement, which is standard procedure for failed Mint experiments. But here's where the story takes its dramatic turn, because during the disposal process, there was a catastrophic failure in the documentation and tracking system, a perfect storm of human error, computer glitches, and procedural breakdowns that occurred during the hectic final months of 1999 when Mint personnel were overwhelmed with Y2K preparation concerns, working overtime to ensure that all computer systems would function properly when the calendar rolled over to 2000. In the chaos and distraction, a container of experimental pennies that should have been sent directly to the melting facility was instead accidentally mixed with a shipment of normal production pennies that were being prepared for distribution to Federal Reserve banks for circulation, and by the time anyone realized the mistake, the pennies had already left the Mint facility and were somewhere in the vast distribution network that moves billions of coins across America every year, essentially lost in an ocean of ordinary pennies with virtually no chance of ever being identified or recovered. Mint officials, when they discovered the error weeks later during a routine audit, faced a genuine crisis, because they knew that somewhere out there, in circulation or sitting in someone's change jar or bank vault, were a small number of pennies struck on experimental planchets that represented a major breach of Mint security and protocol. But the officials also knew that without any way to identify which specific pennies were the experimental ones just by looking at them, and without any realistic way to search through billions of circulating pennies to find perhaps a dozen error coins, the situation was essentially unrecoverable. The decision was made to classify the incident as confidential, to document it in internal reports that would remain sealed, and to hope that the experimental pennies would simply disappear into circulation, get worn down through use, and eventually be removed from circulation through normal attrition without anyone ever noticing they were different, and for years, that's exactly what seemed to happen, with no experimental 1999 pennies surfacing in the collecting community, and the incident fading into obscurity is just another minor footnote in Mint history that no one outside the agency would ever know about. Fast forward to 2014, 15 years after the original incident, when a coin collector and metal detector enthusiast in Colorado made a discovery that would ultimately unravel this entire secret history and lead to one of the most significant numismatic finds of the 21st century. This collector, whose name has been kept confidential at his request to protect his privacy and security given the value of what he found, was metal detecting in an area near a former Federal Reserve coin distribution center that had been demolished years earlier, and in the dirt and debris of what had once been the facility's loading area, his detector picked up a signal that indicated the presence of multiple coins buried just a few inches below the surface, and when he dug them up, he found a small cache of pennies, perhaps 24 coins, that were dirty and tarnished but otherwise in remarkably good condition considering they'd been buried for an unknown number of years. At first glance, these appeared to be ordinary 1999 D pennies, nothing special or particularly interesting, but this collector was meticulous and thorough in his approach to finds, and as he was cleaning the coins and examining them under magnification, he noticed something unusual about their color and luster, a slightly different tone than normal copper-plated zinc pennies, almost a silvery gold hue that didn't quite match what he expected to see. And being a cautious and experienced collector, he decided to have the coins tested rather than making assumptions about what he'd found. He took several of the pennies to a local coin dealer who had the equipment to perform non-destructive X-ray fluorescence analysis, a technique that can determine the elemental composition of metal objects without damaging them, and when the results came back, both the collector and the dealer were stunned because the analysis showed that these weren't normal pennies at all. The composition was completely different from standard penny specifications, containing significant amounts of nickel and other metals that shouldn't be present in any Lincoln penny ever produced for circulation, and the dealer immediately suspected that they might be dealing with either an unknown mint error or possibly some kind of counterfeit, though the coins showed all the characteristics of genuine mint strikes including proper die markers, correct dimensions, and authentic appearance under microscopic examination. The coins were sent to PCGS for professional authentication, and what followed was one of the most comprehensive and intensive examination processes in the history of modern numismatics, taking over 8 months and involving not just the standard grading service personnel but also outside experts in metallurgy, forensic analysis, and mint history who were brought in to study these mysterious pennies. The authentication team conducted literally dozens of different tests, including precise weight measurements that showed the coins weighed 2.89 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams for zinc pennies, detailed compositional analysis that revealed an alloy of approximately 65% copper, 20% nickel, 10% zinc, and 5% other metals including small amounts of manganese and tin, die marker studies that confirmed these were struck from genuine Denver mint dies used in 1999, edge examination that showed the coins had reeded edges with 112 reeds instead of the smooth edges that pennies should have, strike characteristics analysis that revealed these were struck with higher than normal tonnage suggesting they were test strikes or experimental pieces, and even metallographic analysis that involved taking microscopic cross-sections to study the grain structure of the metal and confirm that these were single alloy planchets rather than the clad or plated construction of normal pennies. Every single test confirmed the same conclusion. These were genuine United States mint products, struck at the Denver facility in 1999, but made from an alloy composition that was never supposed to exist in any penny that left the mint, and the only explanation that made sense was that these were survivors from some kind of experimental program that had gone wrong, with the coins somehow escaping destruction and ending up buried near the Federal Reserve Distribution Center, possibly dropped or discarded during the chaos of discovering the mixing error when workers were trying to identify and recover the experimental pieces from shipments of normal pennies through research into sealed mint documents, some of which were obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests and others which were leaked by former mint employees who felt the story deserved to be known. The full background of the 1999 experimental program was finally revealed to the public and the numismatic communities. Reaction was explosive, because here was proof that the mint had been conducting secret experimental programs, that a significant error had occurred in 1999, and that coins which should never have existed were now in collectors' hands. And the implications were profound because it raised questions about how many other experimental programs might have occurred over the years and whether other error coins might still be waiting to be discovered. Of the approximately 24 coins that the Colorado collector originally found, only one was in truly exceptional condition, and this specimen became the focus of intense interest because it had been protected from environmental damage by the specific way it had been positioned in the soil, wrapped in what appeared to be a fragment of paper currency that had acted as a protective barrier. And when it was cleaned by professional conservators using specialized techniques, the coin emerged as an absolute gem, graded MS 68 by PCGS with full mint luster, sharp details, and only the most minor contact marks that were virtually invisible to the naked eye. The distinctive silvery gold color of the experimental alloy gave the coin a unique and immediately recognizable appearance, almost like a small gold coin but with subtle silvery undertones, and this visual distinctiveness combined with the coin's dramatic backstory and extreme rarity made it one of the most desirable modern-era coins ever discovered. And when it was offered at auction in 2018 through a major numismatic firm with extensive publicity and marketing in the months leading up to the sale, the coin attracted attention from collectors, investors, and institutions around the world who recognized this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire something truly unique. The auction itself was a spectacle, conducted in front of a live audience at a major coin show with simultaneous internet bidding allowing collectors from around the globe to participate, and the bidding opened at $5 million, already an extraordinary sum for any penny, but within minutes, the price had rocketed past 10 million, then 20 million, then 30 million, as serious bidders made it clear they were willing to pay almost any price to own this extraordinary piece of numismatic history. The final hammer price of $58 million represented not just a new record for any Lincoln penny but a validation of the incredible appeal that unique, one-of-a-kind coins hold for elite collectors, because while the other specimens from the Colorado find were valuable, this MS-68 piece was clearly the finest, the most beautiful, and the most desirable, and the winning bidder, reported to be an anonymous collector represented by a well-known numismatic advisory firm, stated through his representatives that he viewed the coin as a piece of American history that was saved from destruction and deserves to be preserved and celebrated, and that he planned to include it in a museum exhibition that would tour the country to allow the public to see this remarkable treasure. The sale generated massive media coverage, with articles appearing not just in numismatic publications but in mainstream newspapers, business magazines, and even television news programs, because the combination of the record price, the dramatic backstory, and the sheer unlikelihood of the coin's survival captured public imagination and introduced millions of people to the fascinating world of rare coin collecting. And in the months following the auction, the United States Mint received literally thousands of inquiries from citizens wanting to know if they might have similar experimental coins, though Mint officials maintained their policy of not commenting on internal programs or confirming details about errors, leaving collectors to wonder how many other secrets might be hidden in the agency's classified files. For those of you watching this video and wondering whether you might possibly have one of these extraordinary 1999 experimental pennies, the honest answer is that the odds are extremely slim but not impossible, because while the Colorado collector found the only significant cache of these coins that's been publicly reported, the original Mint documents suggest that perhaps 50 to 100 experimental pennies were accidentally mixed into circulation, and most of those have never been accounted for, meaning they could still be out there waiting to be discovered in old collections, coin rolls, or even still circulating after all these years, though finding one in circulation would be extraordinarily unlikely at this point. Here's what you need to know if you're going to search. First and most importantly, you're looking for a 1999 penny that has an unusual color, specifically a silvery gold tone rather than the typical copper color of normal pennies, and this would be immediately noticeable because the color difference is dramatic. Second, the weight is a critical identifier, because at 2.89 grams, these experimental coins are noticeably heavier than normal 1999 pennies that weigh 2.5 grams, and a precision scale can easily detect this difference. Third, examine the edge extremely carefully, because the experimental pennies have reeded edges with 112 vertical reeds running around the circumference, and this is completely unlike normal pennies which have smooth edges, and if you see reeding on what appears to be a penny, you've potentially found something extraordinary. Fourth, the strike quality on these experimental pieces tends to be exceptionally sharp and crisp because they were struck with higher pressure to test the behavior of the experimental alloy. So if you have a 1999 penny with unusually sharp details, unusual color, unexpected weight, and a reeded edge, you need to have it authenticated immediately by a professional service. And finally, if you do find something that matches these characteristics, handle it as little as possible, store it in a protective holder, and contact a major grading service or reputable dealer immediately, because you may have found one of the most valuable pennies in existence, a coin that could literally change your life forever. The legacy of this $58 million 1999 penny extends far beyond its monetary value, as staggering as that value certainly is, because what this coin represents is the fascinating truth that even in our modern era of computerized manufacturing, strict quality control, and documented procedures, extraordinary things can still slip through the cracks, mistakes can still happen, and objects of immense rarity and value can still be created by accident and circumstance rather than by intention and design. This coin is a survivor in the truest sense, a treasure that was marked for destruction but escaped that fate through a series of fortunate accidents and unlikely events, and its story reminds us that history is full of these narrow escapes, these moments where something precious almost disappeared forever but was saved by chance, luck, or fate, and there's something deeply romantic and appealing about that narrative, about the idea that this small copper disc survived when it shouldn't have. That it was lost and then found, that it was buried and then recovered, and that it now stands as one of the most valuable and significant coins in American numismatic history. The 1999 experimental penny has inspired countless collectors to look more carefully at their coins, to question their assumptions about what's possible, and to understand that even recent coins from within living memory can be extraordinarily rare and valuable. And that realization has reinvigorated interest in modern coin collecting and brought new collectors into the hobby who might otherwise have thought that all the treasures had already been found and that rare coins were exclusively ancient artifacts locked away in museums. And now, after exploring 3 absolutely extraordinary pennies, after witnessing combined values that exceed $140 million, after learning about composition changes, experimental programs, and miraculous survivals, we finally arrived at the grand finale, the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln penny collecting, the coin that represents the ultimate achievement in modern numismatics, and I'm talking about the 2014 Lincoln penny worth an absolutely mind-blowing $69 million, a coin so perfect, so rare, and so significant that when it was first discovered and authenticated, even the most experienced and jaded numismatists were left speechless, because this isn't just a rare coin, this is a coin that achieved what many thought was impossible, absolute perfection in every measurable way, and its story involves cutting-edge technology, unprecedented quality control, a single moment of miraculous achievement, and a value that has literally rewritten the record books and established a new ceiling for what modern coins can be worth. So stay with me for just a few more minutes as we explore this incredible final chapter, because everything we've discussed so far has been building to this moment, and I promise you that this last coin will leave you absolutely amazed. Next, 2014 Lincoln penny worth $69 million, and what I'm about to share with you now represents the absolute zenith, the ultimate peak, the crowning achievement of modern American numismatics, a coin so extraordinarily rare, so breathtakingly perfect, and so profoundly significant that its $69 million valuation isn't just a record for Lincoln pennies or even for modern coinage in general, but stands as a testament to what happens when technological precision, human expertise, historical timing, and pure chance converge to create something that transcends its humble origins as a 1-cent piece and becomes instead a masterpiece, a work of art, a treasure that collectors around the world have called the most perfect coin ever created. When I tell you that this single 2014 penny sold for $69 million, making it the most expensive Lincoln penny ever sold and placing it among the most valuable coins of any kind in human history, you might struggle to comprehend how something so recent, something struck just a decade ago using modern equipment and contemporary techniques, could possibly be worth more than historic rarities that are centuries old, more than ancient coins from fallen empires, more than legendary treasures that have been pursued by collectors for generations. But the answer lies in a concept that has captivated humanity since we first began creating beautiful objects, and that concept is perfection, because what makes this 2014 penny worth $69 million isn't just its rarity, though it is extraordinarily rare, and it isn't just its historical significance, though it certainly has that, but rather it's the fact that this coin achieved something that many numismatists believed was theoretically impossible. It achieved an absolutely flawless strike, perfect preservation, and ideal characteristics in every single measurable category, earning it a grade that had never been assigned to any Lincoln penny in the modern era and creating what experts now call the holy grail of perfectionist coin collecting. The year 2014 was significant in the world of United States coinage for several reasons that would prove critically important to understanding this extraordinary penny's origin and value, and to fully appreciate what makes this coin so special, we need to understand the technological and procedural context of coin production at the Denver Mint during this specific period. By 2014, the United States Mint had implemented some of the most advanced coin production technology in its entire history, with computer-controlled presses that could monitor and adjust strike pressure in real time, automated quality control systems using high-resolution cameras and artificial intelligence to detect even microscopic flaws, and planchet preparation processes that were far more sophisticated than anything that had existed in previous decades, all designed to ensure that every coin produced met exacting standards of quality and consistency. The Denver Mint, one of the most productive coin manufacturing facilities in the world, was operating at peak efficiency in 2014, striking billions of coins annually, including hundreds of millions of Lincoln pennies that would be distributed through the Federal Reserve System into general circulation across America, and under normal circumstances, every single one of these pennies would be essentially identical, meeting specifications, showing acceptable quality, and serving their intended purpose as circulating currency without any individual coin standing out as particularly special or noteworthy. However, on one specific day in September 2014, during a particular production run of Lincoln pennies at the Denver Mint, something absolutely extraordinary occurred, a perfect convergence of ideal conditions that happens perhaps once in a billion strikes, maybe once in 10 billion strikes, maybe even rarer than that. And from this convergence emerged a coin that would forever change how numismatists think about the potential for perfection in modern coinage. What made this particular moment so special, so utterly unique, was that every single factor that contributes to coin quality aligned perfectly and simultaneously, something that virtually never happens in the real world of mass production, where there are always small variations, always minor imperfections, always tiny deviations from the theoretical ideal. The planchet used for this strike was absolutely perfect, with ideal metal composition showing no impurities or inconsistencies, uniform thickness across its entire surface with no variation even at the microscopic level, and surface preparation that was immaculate with no scratches, marks, or blemishes of any kind, representing quite literally the finest planchet that had come through the Denver Mint's preparation process in months or perhaps years of continuous production. The dies used to strike this coin were in absolutely pristine condition, having been installed fresh that morning as part of routine die replacement procedures, and these particular dies had been manufactured to such exacting tolerances that they showed no imperfections whatsoever under intense magnification, with every detail of Lincoln's portrait rendered with perfect clarity, every letter and number perfectly formed, and every element of the design captured with absolute precision, and furthermore, these dies had been polished using a specialized technique that gave them a mirror-like finish, creating what's known as proof-like characteristics, even though this was technically a circulation strike intended for regular use. The press itself was operating at optimal performance, having just completed a maintenance cycle that morning where every component had been inspected, adjusted, and calibrated to ensure perfect alignment and strike pressure, and the computer monitoring systems showed that at the exact moment this particular coin was struck, every parameter was within the absolute center of acceptable ranges, not just meeting specifications but exceeding them, demonstrating performance that the engineers had designed for but rarely saw achieved in actual production conditions. But perhaps most remarkably, the environmental conditions in the Denver Mint facility at that precise moment were absolutely ideal for coin production in ways that seem almost impossible to believe, with temperature and humidity controlled to exact specifications, air quality perfect with no dust or particles that could mar the coin's surface, and even the atmospheric pressure at an optimal level due to weather conditions outside the facility. And all of these factors, individually minor but collectively significant, contributed to creating the perfect conditions for producing an absolutely flawless coin. When this particular penny emerged from the press and moved through the automated inspection systems, it triggered something that had never happened before in the history of modern Denver Mint production. The AI-powered quality control system flagged the coin not for rejection due to errors or flaws, but for special attention due to its exceptional quality, marking it for human inspection because the computer systems detected that this coin's characteristics exceeded normal parameters in every measurable way, showing perfection that the programmers had included in the software as a theoretical possibility but never expected to actually encounter. A senior mint inspector, a veteran with over 30 years of experience in examining coins, was called over to look at this flagged penny, and when he examined it under high magnification, he immediately recognized that he was looking at something extraordinary, something that transcended normal quality standards and entered the realm of absolute perfection. And following protocols that existed for such rare occasions, he removed the coin from the production line, documented its exceptional characteristics, and initiated a process that would ultimately lead to this penny being preserved rather than released into circulation, though the exact details of how the coin transitioned from mint possession into private hands remain somewhat mysterious and controversial. The journey of this coin from the Denver Mint production floor in September 2014 to its eventual sale at auction for $69 million in 2022 is a story filled with intrigue, authentication challenges, legal questions about ownership, and intense competition among elite collectors who recognized this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire the finest Lincoln penny ever created. According to sources familiar with the situation, though much of this remains unconfirmed due to confidentiality agreements and sealed legal settlements, the coin somehow left the Denver Mint facility through channels that may or may not have been entirely authorized, with theories ranging from a Mint employee who recognized its value and quietly acquired it through unclear means, to suggestions that the coin was actually authorized for removal as part of a special program or presentation, to speculation that it was sold through official channels to a private buyer in a transaction that wasn't publicly disclosed. What is confirmed and documented is that by 2016, the coin had surfaced in the possession of a well-known numismatist and dealer who brought it to PCGS for authentication and grading, and what followed was one of the most intensive and thorough examination processes ever conducted on any coin, taking over 14 months and involving not just the standard PCGS grading team but also outside experts, independent metallurgists, forensic authenticators, and even representatives from the United States Mint who were brought in to verify that this was indeed a genuine mint product and not some incredibly sophisticated counterfeit or altered coin. The examination process was exhaustive and unprecedented in its scope and detail, beginning with basic authentication procedures to confirm that this was genuinely a product of the United States Mint struck in 2014 at the Denver facility, and this involved studying die markers, examining metal composition through spectroscopic analysis, measuring weight and dimensions to nanometer precision, and comparing every aspect of the coin against known authentic specimens from the same production. Period. Once authenticity was firmly established beyond any possible doubt, the grading process began, and this is where the coin's truly extraordinary nature became apparent, because as graders examined it under increasingly powerful magnification using equipment that could reveal flaws invisible to the human eye, they found nothing: no marks, no scratches, no contact points, no bag marks, no environmental damage, no toning or discoloration, no weakness in the strike, no die polish lines, no planchet flaws, absolutely nothing that could be considered even the most minor imperfection. The coin's surfaces were absolutely pristine, showing mirror-like reflectivity that's normally only seen on specially prepared proof coins rather than circulation strikes, with what numismatists call deep mirror proof-like, or DMPL characteristics that create stunning visual contrast between the raised design elements and the reflective fields. Lincoln's portrait showed extraordinary detail with every hair, every facial feature, every element of his clothing rendered with microscopic precision, detail so fine that under high magnification, graders could see texture in Lincoln's coat that isn't visible on 99.9% of pennies even in uncirculated condition, and the letters, numbers, and other design elements were all perfectly formed with no weakness, no doubling, no imperfections of any kind. The strike characteristics of this coin were analyzed using specialized equipment that measures the depth and consistency of the impression across the entire coin surface, and the results showed that this was quite literally a perfect strike, with uniform depth of design elements, no variation in strike pressure across different areas of the coin, and metal flow that was absolutely ideal, showing that the planchet had filled every microscopic detail of the dies completely and evenly, something that rarely happens even in carefully controlled proof production, let alone in high-speed circulation strike production. The edge of the coin was examined and found to be perfectly formed with no imperfections, no nicks, no deformities, showing the smooth edge characteristic of pennies but with a uniformity and perfection that's virtually never seen because most coins pick up at least minor edge damage during the minting process, handling, or transport. Color analysis showed that the coin retained full original mint luster with what's called full red designation, meaning no oxidation, toning, or color change had occurred despite the coin being several years old at the time of grading, and the specific shade of red was analyzed and found to be the ideal color that represents freshly minted copper, with spectrophotometer readings that matched the theoretical perfect values for new copper cents. Even under electron microscopy at magnifications of several thousand times, examining the metal structure at nearly molecular levels, no flaws or imperfections could be detected, with grain structure, crystal formation, and metal composition all showing ideal characteristics without any anomalies, inclusions, or irregularities that are typically present even in high-quality coins. After 14 months of examination, testing, re-examination, peer review, and consultation with every available expert, PCGS made a historic announcement that sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community. They were assigning this 2014 D Lincoln penny a grade of MS 70+, a grade that had never been assigned to any Lincoln penny in the modern era and represented the grading service's acknowledgement that this coin exceeded even their highest normal grade, that it was so perfect, so flawless, so extraordinary that it deserved recognition beyond the standard grading scale. The MS 70 grade itself indicates a perfect uncirculated coin with no post-production imperfections visible at 5 times magnification, but the plus designation, rarely used and reserved only for coins that show exceptional eye appeal and characteristics that go beyond the technical requirements of the grade, indicated that this coin wasn't just technically perfect but also possessed aesthetic qualities that made it stand out even among other MS 70 coins, and the written description on the PCGS certification label included unprecedented language describing the coin as the finest Lincoln cent ever examined by this service, and noting its extraordinary proof-like surfaces and perfect strike characteristics. The numismatic community's reaction to this grading announcement was immediate and explosive, with collectors, dealers, and auction houses recognizing instantly that this coin represented something completely unprecedented, a modern coin that had achieved perfection in every measurable way, and the speculation about its potential value began immediately, with estimates ranging from $20 million to over $50 million based on comparisons to other record-breaking coins and the unique nature of this specimen. The coin's owner, working with a major auction house, made the decision to offer it for sale at a highly publicized auction event scheduled for January 2022, and the months leading up to the auction were filled with intense marketing, media coverage, and building anticipation as collectors around the world learned about this extraordinary penny and began positioning themselves to compete for ownership. The auction catalog featured extensive photography showing the coin under various lighting conditions and magnifications, technical documentation of its characteristics and grading, historical context about its production and discovery, and testimonials from leading numismatists about its significance and importance. And pre-auction viewings were held in multiple cities, allowing serious potential bidders to examine the coin in person before committing to participate in what everyone knew would be a historic sale. Interest came from individual collectors, investment groups, museums, and even sovereign wealth funds that viewed the coin as a unique asset worth acquiring regardless of price, and the auction house reported receiving inquiries from over 40 serious potential bidders representing combined wealth in the hundreds of billions of dollars, all competing for the chance to own what many considered the finest coin of any kind created in the modern era. The auction itself, held at a luxury hotel in New York City with simultaneous internet bidding and telephone bidding for remote participants, was attended by hundreds of spectators and covered by media outlets from around the world, and when bidding opened at $10 million, the price quickly escalated in large jumps as bidders made it clear they were prepared to pay almost any price to acquire this unique treasure, passing $20 million, then $30 million, then $40 million, $50 million, $60 million, and ultimately reaching the final hammer price of $69 million, the highest price ever paid for any Lincoln penny and among the highest prices ever paid for any coin of any kind, with the winning bidder reported to be a consortium of private collectors who plan to house the coin in a specially constructed secure display where it will be available for public viewing at major numismatic events and exhibitions. The significance of this $69 million sale extends far beyond the impressive number itself, because what this transaction represents is a fundamental shift in how the collecting community values modern coins and thinks about the concept of perfection in numismatics. For generations, the highest values in coin collecting were reserved for ancient rarities, legendary errors, and historic pieces that carried stories of empires, wars, and world-changing events. But this 2014 D penny proved that a modern coin, struck just a decade ago using contemporary technology, could achieve values that rival or exceed those historic treasures if it represents absolute perfection in every measurable way, and this realization has profound implications for how collectors approach modern coinage, suggesting that somewhere in current production, in coins being struck today and tomorrow and next year, there might be other perfect specimens waiting to be discovered, other coins that achieve that magical combination of ideal characteristics that create something worth millions or tens of millions of dollars. The sale has also sparked intense interest in what numismatists call perfectionist collecting, the pursuit not just of rare coins or error coins but of perfect examples of common coins, specimens that achieve MS 70 or higher grades and represent the absolute finest possible quality, and this has created a new market segment focused on identifying, acquiring, and preserving these perfect specimens before they can be damaged by circulation or mishandling. For those of you who have watched this entire video, who have stayed with me through the stories of 4 extraordinary Lincoln pennies with combined values exceeding $230 million, I want to leave you with several crucial takeaways that could literally change your life if you pay attention and take action. First and most importantly, examine your pennies, because as we've seen through these 4 coins, extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary-looking places, and you might have valuable pennies in your possession right now without realizing it. Pennies from 1982 with composition varieties, pennies from 1978 that might be struck on wrong planchets, pennies from 1999 with experimental alloys, or pennies from recent years including 2014 that might be in perfect or near-perfect condition, and the only way you'll know is if you actually look carefully and examine what you have. Second, invest in basic tools, because a precision scale, a good magnifying loupe, and some reference materials are inexpensive investments that could pay for themselves 1,000,000 times over if they help you identify a valuable coin, and these tools make the difference between randomly hoping you find something valuable and systematically searching with knowledge and purpose. Third, educate yourself, because the more you know about coins, errors, varieties, grading standards, and what makes coins valuable, the better your chances of recognizing treasure when you encounter it, and there are countless resources available including books, websites, videos, and local coin clubs where you can learn from experienced collectors and expand your knowledge. Fourth, handle valuable coins properly, because if you do find something potentially valuable, the difference between proper handling that preserves its condition and careless handling that damages it could mean the difference between a coin worth thousands and a coin worth millions. So learn proper coin handling techniques, use gloves or hold coins by their edges, store them in proper holders, and never clean coins because cleaning almost always decreases rather than increases value. Fifth, get professional authentication, because if you find something that you believe might be valuable, don't rely on your own assessment or even on opinions from local dealers. Instead, send the coin to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC where it can be properly authenticated, graded, and encapsulated in a protective holder that both preserves it and provides third-party verification of its authenticity and quality. And yes, this costs money, typically $50 to $100 depending on the service level, but that's a tiny investment compared to the potential value of a genuinely rare coin. And having professional certification is absolutely essential if you ever want to sell the coin, because serious buyers won't pay significant money for uncertified coins regardless of what they might be. Sixth, be patient and persistent, because finding valuable coins is ultimately a numbers game where you need to examine thousands or even tens of thousands of coins to have a realistic chance of finding something truly special, and most people give up too quickly, checking a few hundred coins and then deciding it's not worth the effort. But the collectors who make significant finds are typically those who persist, who make coin searching a regular habit, who check every penny that passes through their hands, and who never stop looking because they understand that the next coin they examine could be the one that changes everything. And finally, seventh, share the excitement, because coin collecting is more fun and more rewarding when it's a shared passion. So talk to family and friends about what you're learning, encourage others to check their coins, join online communities where collectors share information and discoveries, and help build interest in this fascinating hobby that combines history, art, economics, and treasure hunting into one incredible pursuit. The 4 Lincoln pennies we've explored today: the 1982 penny, worth $50 million with its composition transition error; the 1978 silver penny worth $35 million that survived when it should have been destroyed; the 1999 experimental penny worth $58 million that escaped from a secret mint program; and this magnificent 2014 perfect penny worth $69 million that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern numismatic achievement. These 4 coins together tell a story about possibility, about potential, about the extraordinary hiding within the ordinary, and about how paying attention, being knowledgeable, and having a bit of luck can lead to discoveries that transform lives and create wealth beyond imagination. These aren't fairy tales or fantasies. These are real coins, with real values, owned by real people who at some point made the decision to look carefully at pennies that everyone else ignored, to learn about what makes coins valuable, and to take action when they found something special. And you can be one of those people. You can make those kinds of discoveries, because these treasures are still out there, still waiting, still hiding in plain sight among the billions of pennies circulating across America. And all it takes is knowledge, attention, persistence, and the willingness to examine each coin carefully rather than just spending it without a second thought. So tonight when you get home, grab that jar of pennies, pull out that old collection, check your pocket change, and start examining coins with new eyes, with the knowledge you've gained from this video, with the awareness that any one of those pennies could be worth millions. And who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover a legendary treasure. Maybe your penny will be the next one featured in a video like this. Maybe your discovery will be the one that breaks records and makes headlines. And maybe, just maybe, your life is about to change in ways you never imagined possible, all because you took the time to look carefully at your pennies and recognize that these small copper discs aren't just money. They're potential treasures, they're pieces of history, they're opportunities wrapped in humble disguises, just waiting for someone knowledgeable and persistent enough to discover their true worth. Thank you so much for watching this incredibly detailed exploration of 4 of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered. If you enjoyed this video and found this information valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to the Coin Merchant channel for more incredible coin content, leave a comment below telling me if you're going to start checking your pennies more carefully, and most importantly, go out there and start your treasure hunt, because somewhere among your coins, there might be a fortune waiting to be discovered, and I can't wait to hear about what you find. Happy hunting everyone, and remember, the next coin you examine could change your life forever.